Hi, Aditi. How are you?
I'm good. How are you? What's been
Very
happening?
good. Well, as you know, we've been enjoying the lockdown. I always believe the glass is always half full. And I think it's been a great period for introspection, a
Hmm.
great period for catching up with family, with little things that you never thought important.
Hmm.
So I think it's been a great time. A lot of people have complained about the lockdown.
Yeah.
I would travel every alternate day or every 2 days, but I haven't missed much. I haven't
Hmm.
missed it at all.
Hmm. So you said that you've learned little things about your family. What has been the learning? I know that little Gayatri must be a delight to be with. But besides learning about her, what else have you learned?
So we actually kind of revisited our lives because my mother is with us,
Hmm.
and my wife Lakshmi got to know about how we grew up and uh,
Hmm.
the family tree, as it were, the branches that have spawned. These are things that you kind of revisit because you have the time to revisit. We are so
Absolutely.
consumed by the hurriedness of our lives that
Yeah.
we forget that there have been some glorious moments and some not so happy moments where you want to revisit, where you want to catch up, you want to laugh on the stupid things you did, you want to remember the many happy moments that you spent. So in that sense, it's been a very heartwarming experience. Yes,
Hmm.
there's been a lot of pain that we've seen outside our lives, outside the cocoons that we live in.
Yeah.
And that has also opened us to further introspection that, you know, we live in an unequal world, but an unequal world doesn't have to be a cruelly unequal world. It can
Correct.
be an equal world or an unequal world where there's more empathy, where there's more compassion, and most importantly, where there's a greater understanding of who we are, who we should be, and what life is all about. So, in that sense, it's been a great reawakening. It's been a reset button. It's been recalibrating your life, and to that end, it's good.
So lots of reads there. Now you did mention that you reminisced a lot about the family tree and so on and so forth. How? What about having created new memories? What are those? How have you spent time in creating those beautiful memories? What have you been up to?
So I've always been a voracious reader, so I've continued to keep up with my reading. Uh, my love for theater, so I've revisited a lot of the plays. I've
Mm-hmm.
been involved in a million webinars, which many of which I've detested because Zoom calls and webinars really get on my nerves beyond a point. I've done a lot more writing.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so, in that sense, these will be the memories. The memories will be how we unlocked our mind and our soul in the period of lockdown. It's
Were
always
you,
important.
were you able to unlock any potential? Did you find something new about yourself? Did you manage to dig in to that level where you realize, oh, okay, this is also part of my personality, which for years I haven't really known about?
So, I discovered that I'm a reasonably good cook.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I also discovered that I have many people to thank for that.
Mm-hmm.
YouTube in particular, because of all the recipes. And I've been cooking away. So to that end, it's been a revelation. I
Mm-hmm.
always thought I was good with eggs, but there's a lot more that's going on. Uh, I've had a lot of interaction with staff, with help at home, trying to understand, how their lives are going to shape up, how their lives are shaping up qua their own homes. So, in that sense, Aditi, I've always been a person who's looked at life with blessings, with gratitude. The fact that we live the way we do in itself is something we should be grateful for to our parents, to a superior being, whoever it is.
Yeah.
And I think it allows you to revisit. I've been going over old photographs, I've been going over albums, I've been going over my notes that I'd taken, marketing notes, presentations. So it's been very, very interesting. And yes, catching up with old friends. The calls that we never make.
Yeah.
Just ringing people out of the blue who you may have caught up after 20 years or 25 years. So in that sense, it's pretty interesting.
And why did you say that Zoom meetings and webinars are getting on your nerves? Because pretty much, Suhel, if you see how the world is shaping up, a lot of our work now is going to be online. It is going to be digital, because from the looks of it, people have realized that you don't really have to travel in traffic, especially in a city like Mumbai or Delhi. So I find it a boon. So was wondering, what is it that I missed that, you saw, which was annoying?
So, number one, there are more and more people who want to go online to discuss subjects that may be vacuous or just to get people together. The other thing that really I've been grappling with is people inviting you for Zoom parties, where you have your drink and you listen to your music and blah, blah, blah. But to come back to your original point, many years ago, I used to serve on the board, the global board of British Airways. And then 2008 happened. But before that, when 9/11 happened, a lot of travel got curtailed, got restricted. People were worried about travel. Security procedures came into being. And a lot of people said, oh, the world will change. There will be a reset. People will, not travel as much. People will go online. But that never happens. The essence of human behavior is social acceptance, but more importantly, social mingling. That is the essence of human behavior. If you read, and he's an outstanding writer and a philosopher called Alain de Botton.
Oh, yes.
Alain de Botton has written some remarkable books, including a seminal book called Religion for Atheists, where he obviously discusses the contours of religion. He says in that book that religion was created by man to conform, control, and cluster. In many ways, societies are only relevant when they are allowing for people to intermingle. I mean, Da Vinci wouldn't have been who he is, or Michelangelo wouldn't have been who he is, or Mozart, if they hadn't had the interactions. If Mozart hadn't interacted with Salieri or with Katharina, or in the court of Austria in Vienna, you wouldn't have had that level of creation. If Wordsworth hadn't gone to the Lake District, you wouldn't have had daffodils. So absolutely. I don't think we need to be sequestered, but we need that freedom. We need unfettered access to the world. My worry has been my little 6-month-old daughter has not seen a blue sky because of the lockdown, So there are these concerns.
Yeah, so I completely agree with you. Having said that, I have also observed a lot of youngsters, and I've spoken to quite a few mothers, youngsters who are, especially in their teenage years or a little later than that, they are completely hooked on to this screen, gaming all the time. Now, given that you and I enjoy social mingling and, getting our inspiration from meeting people or observing other things, how does one look at this changing trend, which is that they don't want to step out? They're very happy to sit in front of their computer. And I'm not sure whether this is good or bad, time will tell. But for me, because of the generation I come from, it doesn't seem like an appealing perspective for me to see that the youth is stuck to their screens and pretty much just shooting imaginary.
But, I would worry for that generation then, Aditi.
But that is our
There's
future.
no point looking at a Frangipani on your Mac if you can't look at it when it's blooming. There's no point not being able to smell the roses or touch the leaves or walk on pebbles. That is essential human experience. See, there are two kinds of experiences in life. The experiences that allow you to touch and feel, and experiences that are at a distance. The experiences that are at distance are normally owing to three reasons. One is physical disability, monetary disability, or access unavailability. If these three are eliminated, then you would like to do those things. How would you experience the magic of a Van Gogh sitting in front of your Mac and then trying to understand the suicidal bent of that artist and why he created what he did? How will you ever fathom the pain, the agony of a Van Gogh? How will you understand the dynamism of an Anish Malik or a Damien Hirst? So I think it's very, very important to understand that we as human beings are not nuns in a cloistered sect. We have to move out in order to experience. And you're
Yeah.
right. You know, a lot of people want to experience that through their screen, but I worry for them. I worry because they themselves will truncate their experiences.
Yeah, and that is the worry which I'm right now battling with, that what is the new generation doing in the sense that if they are not open to experiencing these tactile experiences in their lives and having, you connect when you see a real painting hanging on the wall, there's a very, very different feeling, right? But I don't know. I mean, that is something that, one can only hope
I
that
mean,
everything
if
falls
you
into
were to go
place.
to a play or if you were to go to a museum with someone you care for or your child or whoever it is, you have the ability to discuss. You have the ability for a counterpoint. You have the ability for debate. I've always said you can disagree without being disagreeable. So
Yeah.
I genuinely believe that while we will talk about the lockdown, we will justify the narrative, we will say that, look, we've had to do what we could and make the best of it, which is absolutely perfect. But the point is, beyond that, what? When you re enter the real life, either out of compulsion or because of social mores, then what kind of a human being will you be? And how will you respond to the
Yeah.
nuances of that new world order?
The human experience, pretty much. It all lies in intermingling and experiencing. Right. Now, coming to your area of expertise, which is marketing, how do you see the consumer behavior changing, given the situation that now, since it is over 60 days that we've been buying everything pretty much online, do you think that the behavior has definitely changed, where nobody's going to go out to the mall or to a store to actually buy, or do you think it will go back to the whole experience of going to the market and picking up stuff?
I think
Has
it's a
it
great
changed
question.
forever? Has it changed forever?
So I think it's a great question, and let me address it in multiple parts because I've been, talking to CEOs, and there was a Times Now show on how brands will behave and what brands should do. So there are a couple of things that are going to happen, and this is the reality we will live with. Number one, consumers for the next 6 to 8 months will be very wary of going out. They will be very concerned about social distancing. They'll be concerned about hygiene. They'll be concerned about safety. In India, a large part of India, and I'm not talking about the urban elite only, a large part of India lives in joint families where there are people who are older, with comorbidities. So people are going to be concerned about that. I don't think people are going to rush to hotels and rush to malls and rush to pools in the way they did. I think a lot of brands will have to recalibrate their offerings where there is a lot of stress that they will lay out on the measures of safety, hygiene, sanitization that they've injected into the business. And here, more particularly, the entire business of edibles, the entire consumption business, which we consume in ourselves or which we inject in ourselves. I think air travel will be an equally a tricky business. People will be worried about long haul flights. They'll be worried about, uh, 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 what should I say? People will be worried about the safety angle of being cloistered in an aircraft for about 4, 5, 6 hours.
Yeah.
I see more and more people driving to destinations that they want to drive to. I see more and more people going in groups that they are familiar with, that they know that they are safe with. I see a lot of brands being purchased online because the online experience will mitigate the need for going to a mall. So malls will suffer hugely. Retail, as we see it, as in offline retail, brick and mortar shops will also suffer. I think the restauranting business will completely change. You will have separation. You will have fewer covers in a restaurant, which will impact the revenue streams of a lot of the restaurants. My prediction, as harsh as it may seem, is almost 40 to 60% of your restaurant business will disappear.
So
and
this
it will
will also
disappear for at
directly
least the
impact
next
the
2 years.
yeah. This will also directly impact the real estate business. Anyway,
So
it goes on.
the sectors that are going to bleed in India are the following: automotive, other than two-wheelers. And I'll tell you why automotive. And I think Hormuz is listening into this thing, and Hormuz is unarguably the finest auto mind in India. He's the editor of Autocar. And let me tell you what's going to happen. As salaries are cut, people are laid off, their capacity to buy vehicles will reduce. Their capacity to fulfill their commitments towards EMIs will reduce. So the size of the check in their minds will have to be far lower than it was before. I don't see the two-wheeler business being impacted as much as I see the four-wheeler business being impacted. Real estate will be impacted again for two reasons. Number one, more and more people will default on their EMI payments. 87% of India's real estate is bought through EMIs. Also, migrant labor. What's happened with migrant labor, which formed almost the core of your real estate business, has gone back to their homes. They won't return because you've played with both their livelihood and their dignity. When you do that, you create a lot of concern in their minds. And I don't think these people are going to come back in a hurry. So your labor costs will shoot. Construction delays will happen. That is a tragedy that is going to unfold. Tourism is going to take a big beating, especially where it's tourism coming into India, what we call inbound tourism.
Yeah.
Because your source markets are going to be drying up. The US, the UK, large swaths of Europe will dry up. Remember, Aditi, from the 15th of the middle of March till the end of June, we will have no international flights coming in and out.
Absolutely.
Hotel industry will suffer grievously. And the tragedy is, for whatever reason, and we don't want to discuss politics here, there hasn't been much of a sop given to the tourism industry as should have been. A lot of the brands will start looking inwards again. So especially tourism brands will start looking at the domestic market as a key repository of a source market. So there are these headwinds, but I'm a great believer that brand India will survive. This is a great opportunity for Indian brands to look at excellence, to look at synergies, and look at actually exporting stuff out much more than they did ever before. You will have a lot of distressed sales. So I also believe that there will be a lot of aggregation. There'll be a lot of consolidation. A lot of businesses will be up for sale.
I'm going to put a pin in here to say that, when we talk about focused marketing, of being a focused business person and doing one particular thing at a time, now I see a lot of players jumping in and saying, okay, I will sell this and that and everything. Now, that pretty much goes against the ethos of doing business, which is do focused business, stick to your expertise. But here we see that everybody's doing everything. The food companies are selling sanitary pads and groceries, and so how...
You're absolutely right. I think that is a legacy of the Indira Gandhi time. And again, no politics, but the point was we lived in a license Raj till 1990. So you had a quaint situation where Bajaj would produce the Chetak. They would also produce Amla hair oil. They would also produce the electric bulb. And it was the same with almost many large groups. Look at the Birlas, for example, Tatas. I think that's changing. Also, please understand that consumers love overarching brands which have a repository of trust. So sometimes the word Tata attributes and creates more trust for me. So anything from the stable of Tata, trust is already a given. Then I build on excellence. Then I build on, other attributes of the brand. So I believe what is going to happen is, see, consumers are essentially human beings. And we've all been shaken by what's happened. We've been shaken because this is the first time that there has been a blend of economic and health coming together in almost a disastrous concoction.
Yeah.
The last time something like this happened was only in the health domain, let's say the Spanish flu. Then when you had the Wall Street crash, it was economic.
Yeah.
9/11 was security, was terrorism. 2008 was again financial. Plus the other thing, Aditi, which is very important to recognize is that this has been a borderless issue. The virus has recognized no borders. So the entire world is suffering. When the entire world suffers, the first thing that countries do is they close their trade borders. They erect barriers where earlier there were none, because they want their own markets to be protected. Protectionism is antithetical to borderless trade or to free capitalism. So I think that also will change. More and more consumers are going to ask you, let's say if Aditi is manufacturing a product, they're going to ask Aditi, okay, how are you handling the treatment of the product? What are the safety measures you're taking? What levels of transparency are you indulging in? So I see a lot. I see healthcare booming. It's been a tragedy that in India, for the last 72 years, we've only spent 1.23% of our GDP on healthcare. I mean, we have the most abysmal record of public healthcare. Now, more and more people are going to worry about it. And please understand, this is not the last virus. So if we don't learn lessons from this virus, and the lessons are only three. Number one, we must have affordable healthcare. Number two, we must have accessible healthcare. Number three, we must have healthcare run by trusted professionals. If you look at our public sector healthcare system, it is in a mess because we've never invested in it. If you are in Raipur and you need a COVID test, you'll have to travel, you'll have to drive 11 and a half hours away. So we have to change that. We have to make sure that health is affordable, available, accessible through trusted professionals wherever we want. So I think there are great lessons for India. The Indian jugaad, I'm not a great fan of, but I think the Indian resilience is something we've seen and experienced time after time. I don't believe that India will suffer as grievously as people make it out to be.
Absolutely. Now, pulling back from the national or, the happenings, what are happening right now, and going to you as a person, how have you been spending your time? So,
but as I said, I've been reading, I've been listening to music, I've been watching documentaries, I've been writing, been on these webinars, and spending a lot of time with family, with my daughter, with my wife, with my mother. So it's all good.
So have you found a timetable? Are you doing that, or you're just going with the flow?
No, my routine, even without a lockdown, is fairly, disciplined. So it's not as if I've had to make any major adjustments. I'm a very early riser. So, that affords you quality time for reading. It affords you quality time for writing. And then when everyone wakes up, then you're spending that time, then lunch, nap, evenings, you're again spending time with either webinars or family. And then, we go to bed very early. So it's all good.
And any new books in the pipeline?
Well, there may be. I'm actually still debating on a more humorous take on this lockdown. And I've already done one piece for Open Magazine on the quarantine notebook or the quarantine diaries. And I think over time in India, we're losing the ability both to laugh and to laugh at ourselves. So I think it's very, very important to recognize the need to inject humor into our otherwise very morbid and sordid lives. So let's see. It's still early days.
Okay, and the book that you had written, India's Greatest CEOs, which is on my bookshelf, what has been your learning? And how have you applied that to your own life, the learnings that you got through speaking to so many great leaders?
See, the underlying aspect of India's greatest CEOs was to recognize not only leadership processes, but also leadership values. And I think the two values that stood out were trust and transparency. The leadership traits were obviously different. Whether you're talking to a Mukesh Ambani or to a Ratan Tata, they're obviously very different people, but they've led their organizations in a very different way, but to the same end. See, ultimately, companies work for shareholder value. Companies work towards enhancing shareholder returns. Companies also work for creating long-term trusted relationships between brand and consumer. So to that end, everything that you do has to be process driven and not just passion driven. And that was
So
a
would you
critical.
say, yeah. So would you say, I mean, yeah, company and the stakeholders is one thing, but pretty much if you look at it in a very different perspective, the consumer is really the largest stakeholder in that sense, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, if there's no consumer, there's no brand. So
Yeah,
you're
yeah,
absolutely right. But the point is that sometimes brands take consumers for granted. Brands
yeah.
believe, we saw that in India. In up until the 90s, you didn't have a choice. You had a waiting list for a scooter, you had a waiting list for a motorcycle, you had a waiting list for cars, and you had no choice. But when
But I
choice,
also see that again, Suhel, when we see the whole online bubble which is created, which is a valuation game where, you know, people don't really pay attention to what the consumer wants or what the consumer's experience is. It's pretty much creating this whole show just so that you get a certain valuation and then people exit, you know, and
but
become
you know,
rich.
it won't survive. It won't survive the test of time. If you go back to 2000 or you go back to the, yeah,
But they are
2000
not even
was,
looking at that. They are not even looking at a long-term game. They just create the valuation game, get out. The exit strategy
but
is in
that
place
is,
even
yeah,
before establishing the brand.
you're right. But that is irresponsible investment banking. That is irresponsible financial prudence. So you're right. I mean, there are brands that do that. I mean, there are companies that do that. Those companies very quickly fail. And those companies will never get rounds of investment. Having
But
said
do
that,
they really fail? I mean, think about it. Even if a person has an exit strategy, gets seed funding or angel investing, has made some buck, and that's good enough for, you know, a year or two of work. They're set for life pretty much.
so you know, I call them the most suave marauders, the most suave thieves. But the reality is, and you're right. People see through people who will make a fool of you by being financially distrusting or by being financially untrustworthy. So that is going to happen. Having said that, I don't believe it's all gloom and doom. There have been excellent online platforms which are solving consumer needs, which is why consumers are warming up to them. It's also true that a lot of them are using subvention. They're using seed money. They're using capital which comes cheap in the Bay Area, and therefore discounting brands in India. But again, that'll bottom out. See, it's not something that can survive the long term. So that's the reality of it.
True, true, absolutely. Now, the whole purpose of this talk was something else, but it's always very different for each person. I pretty much go with the personality of the guest. Having said that, I've always asked this question uniformly to everybody because this is all about mental well-being. And each individual does go through his ups and downs in life. There is nobody who's not faced that. How do you, Suhel said, get up when there is a down? What do you do to emerge? Do you stay there for some time, wallow in the pity and, you know, the whole, oh my God, this has happened to me kind of a thing? Are you the kind of person who will dust his backside and say, okay, let me see how I'm going to handle this situation and emerge stronger? What is your approach? Or you just go with the flow depending on the situation?
No, I don't go with the flow. I immediately stop to reassess what I've done. But and I don't mean to be facetious or skim the issue, but I'm very, very clear, Aditi, in my mind that I know my truth, and I know that I can sleep with my truth. I know what has happened, what I've done, and what I've not done. I also know where and why attacks come. And see, the tragedy is if you're known or if you're successful or if you're whoever you are, you'll always be attacked. And we live in a pernicious society. It's very easy for people to make statements, to throw mud. You can't respond to everything, but that doesn't mean that you don't take the feedback that perhaps comes out of it. So you live and learn. But the point is, you can't ignore it. You cannot brush it under the carpet, but also you don't be consumed by it. You can always separate the falsehood from the truth. And ultimately, Aditi, we all know our own truth. Ultimately, we all have to sleep well. And if your conscience is clear, you don't need to worry. There will be
Yeah,
people
absolutely.
who will say things because they need to, because they are paid to, because they want to. Good for them. There's that old saying. I don't know which author said it. It said, The caravan moves on, the dogs keep barking, but the caravan doesn't stop. While not being dismissive, but the fact is that you can't stop and you can't, measure every comment that is made because it's important for, social media or whoever. So that's how it is.
No, what is important is to you and to your loved ones. As long as you know your truth and your family and friends know it, that's the way to go ahead. Having said that, so what you're trying to say is you take a step back and analyze what the situation is and then take action, not react, but respond to whatever happens. That's how you get out of any downs that you faced in your life.
Absolutely. And that's true for all human beings.
Not really. No, some people just react.
No, some people may react, but I'm saying if you really want to address an issue, you have to understand why that issue arose in the first place and then take it from there. So it's not as if you ignore the issue or you brush the issue under the carpet. So it's a bit of both.
But again, like I said, that, when I spoke to a few people, some people prefer to ignore whatever is negative or whatever is being said about. They just ignore and they don't react or respond either. Some people choose to respond to certain things and ignore certain. So they find a balance, And some people just go ahead and respond to each and every negative situation that comes in their life. So I guess it's about what is your
to each his own
guiding you.
Absolutely, to each his own. Plus, it also depends on the kind of issues that arise. Sometimes there are business issues, non-business issues, and you take that call as and when. But as I said, ultimately, no one is mandated to respond to everything, and no one is mandated to ignore everything. Ultimately, you have to be very clear in your heart and in your conscience, and that's what it matters. And that's true for business. That's true for if you look at the historical evolution of society, it's true of that. I mean, Galileo was poisoned. I mean, people thought Voltaire was insane. You had the whole witch movement, which began. I mean, Joan of Arc, Florence Nightingale. So I'm saying the world is replete with hate. The world is replete. Look at the latest example. Sonu Sood, who's doing unbelievable work. Unbelievable work. Now there are conspiracy theories. Is he working for this party, that party? The problem is we do and we always let our perniciousness take over rather than value judgments. So the best thing is to continue to do what you do without rancor, without, any kind of distrust, and take it as par for the course. As simple.
So are you saying that take people at face value in that sense?
I would normally do that.
Okay, that's one way of looking at it.
Yeah,
sure.
You can't get into a conversation with someone by first saying that you distrust the person.
Yeah. And the only way to trust is to trust. That's what I believe in.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, that's superb. My God, the time is 6:34, so we are already beyond time. I did tell you that it is going to be a half-an-hour show. So if there is one message that you would like to give the contributors on this chat who are here with us, what would that be?
I'm not the supreme leader. I have no message. All I'm saying is that life is too short. Life is too valuable to squander away. Respect the life that you have. Make the best of it and continuously embellish yourself. It's very, very important for self-actualization, but more importantly, for self-worth. And as long as you can do that, the world is your oyster.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Suhel, for coming on Dr. A Talks and sharing your life and your thoughts with all of us.
Thank you so much, Aditi. Thank you.
Okay. Have a wonderful evening. Bye.
Bye-bye.